Hey, what's up YouTube? Adrian here. I currently have in hand the Panasonic Lumix G9. I'm about to give you my thoughts and do a bit of review on the camera, but first, let's get to the important stuff. Okay, that's a lot better. Let's get talking. Okay, I'm back. I am on location. What I'm going to be doing is I want to test a few things in the field per se, and then I'm going to get back in the studio and then talk about the results, how I found using the camera, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be doing a comparison with my Canon 70D, and that is fitted with a Sigma R 18 to 35mm lens. So I'm going to be doing some side-by-side shots, so doing the same product shots and using identical settings, because this is a micro four thirds and that's APS-C, and the lenses are different. I'm going to try my best to match the focal length, but it won't be exact. And then I also want to test the app, the Panasonic app, and see what that is like. And then I also want to test the image stabilizer. This has got an amazing image stabilizer. It's rated at 6.5 stops, so I want to do maybe a shot at 1/10 of a second and see how sharp it remains in comparison to my Canon. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, that's all done, shots are done, tested it out. I'm going to get back in the studio and let you know what I think. Let's go. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to go through some of the specs and then look at those two different shots side by side, check out the image stabilization, how that worked, and then wrap up with the things that I like and the things that I don't like. So a couple of the specs for you. I'm not going to go through all the specs. If you look at the description, there is a link to the Panasonic website where you can get all the specs that you need, and you can geek over those. But a couple of the key ones: it's a micro four thirds camera. It's got a 20.3 megapixel sensor. It shoots 4K in 60 frames per second, which is super impressive. It does 1080p and is fast and as slow, as 180 frames per second. So the coffee scene at the start, I filmed that with using that slow-mo mode, which is really cool. It doesn't record audio or anything like that, but it's a really cool feature and gives you some really cool B-roll footage. With the electronic shutter, you can get 20 frames per second in RAW for up to 50 shots, and then with the mechanical shutter you can get 9 frames per second, which is really impressive. And especially if you're doing things like sports photography or something like that, having that sort of speed is really handy, which is really cool. I've done some running stuff for New Balance, and my 70D can do up to 7 frames per second, but having 9 or 20 would be just amazing. It does have a really great autofocus system. It's a 225 point autofocus system, which is super impressive, and the autofocus on this camera is great, and there's a whole bunch of different autofocus modes, which is super handy. And then the image stabilization is one of the key features, or one of the big features, I think. It's rated at 6.5 stops, which I will be testing or have tested, and will show you the results of that, which is cool. In a practical sense, it does have a dual SD card slot, which is super handy. A flip out screen, which also I find really handy. It's got the top LCD, which this camera is targeted to still photography, but is really impressive with the video stuff as well. So that top LCD is really handy to have. And then of course it's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. What I found is that the Bluetooth, you couldn't actually have a live feed or things like that. You could just sort of trigger for shots, but it's great, I guess, if you want to save some battery. But the Wi-Fi feature is great and something that I use all the time. So let's check out those shots side by side. Looking at the photo now, we have the Canon shot on the right and the Panasonic shot on the left. From what I can see right away, it looks like the Panasonic is substantially sharper. In order to get these images, I was really struggling with the format, the raw format of the Panasonic for whatever reason, and I tried a whole bunch of things to try and get it to work within iMovie, but it kept like not accepting the file. So I actually had to go on a website and then convert it to a JPEG on the website and then put it into iMovie. And so what I did to make it sort of fair, I guess, is I put both those images through the same website. It did slightly alter, it seemed to sharpen the images slightly, and also seemed to alter the white balance. So both these are shot at 3/20ths of a 320ths of a second, 2.8 aperture, and ISO at 200. And yeah, you can see obviously that the Canon is giving you a bit more of a blurry background, which is nice for that Sigma art lens, but the Panasonic does seem to be a touch sharper. The white balance is both set to auto white balance, but it's slightly different. The Panasonic seems to give a bit more of a colder image, whereas to me the Canon seems slightly warmer. But they do look really good. Both look really good. I think the Canon's actually holding its own for, you know, in comparison, but the Sigma art lens is very sharp, which is helping out. But yeah, really not surprised at all by the sharpness of the Panasonic. It gives a really sharp image, and I'd love to have had a lens with a wider aperture, so I would have been able to get some more blurry backgrounds. But yeah, really impressed with the image quality on the Panasonic. Let's look at a bit more of a up close image. Here it is. It seems to flip over on this image for some reason. When you zoom in, the Canon is looking a bit sharp, and I'm not quite sure why that is. However, I did notice on that website that when I exported them, it didn't give me a size option, and the Panasonic file actually came out half the size, which is probably a big reason why this image is looking less sharp as I zoom in. But yeah, really frustrating that I couldn't get those images out here at full quality. But yeah, just from what you can see here, the Panasonic is super impressive. Again, I tested out the image stabilization, which I was really impressed with straight off the bat. You know, not even trying to get, you know, super still necessarily. I got a quite sharp image on the Panasonic, as you can see here. I did also manage to get a sharp image on the Canon, although it took me several attempts, and most of the attempts looked more like this. So yeah, that's a great feature. I'm really stoked about that image stabilization, especially in low light conditions. You'll be able to drop the shutter speed down quite a bit and not have to really worry, and still be able to get usable images, which is massive. That's a massive breakthrough in technology. So okay, so for the final wrap up of the video, I'm going to talk about the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. I'm going to start with the things that I didn't like. This list is actually surprisingly short. I actually really like the camera. One of the things I guess I found confusing to start with was the menu system. I'm used to using a Canon, and the menu system is very different. And then even the basic things, I guess because it was on default settings, I had to try and find the settings, and then as I used the camera I had to change things. Even things like the electronic viewfinder, it wasn't showing the current settings. It was I'm not quite sure what it was doing, but I had to find that setting so I could actually see what the shot was going to look like. That is actually a really useful feature, and a massive bonus of a mirrorless camera over a mirrored camera is that you can actually see exactly what your shot's going to look like. But yeah, I did find the menu system a little bit confusing, and the dials and things like that, but I guess as I used the camera more and more, I got used to it, which is cool. But it would be a bit of a hurdle as you move from one camera to another. The app was particularly disappointing. I was hoping that the app would be really good, because it's something that's a really key feature for me when using it connected to Wi-Fi. But what I found is that every time I sort of lock my phone and then go and review the photo, I had to wait for a while for the camera to reconnect, which was really annoying. On the Canon app, as you just unlock the phone again, it just does you get that mirror sound or that shutter sound, and then boom, you're straight back into it, which is really cool. And so you can review your photos in the camera and then get back into it. I guess you could review your photos on your phone, but I tend to just go to the camera. I don't know, maybe it's just a habit. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with the app. Otherwise, all the functionality of the app was great. It also had some extra cool features which were cool. It allowed you to do like I can't remember what it's called, but it sensed your motion, and so if you're into those jumping shots, and I did a jumping shot, which you can check out here, what it would do is as you jumped, it would detect that you're jumping, and then it would take a shot, which is kind of cool. So there's some extra cool features with that app, but a little bit disappointing overall. I would have loved to have tested the camera with a lens with a wider aperture. So thankful that Panasonic loaned me the camera, but having something a bit more than a 2.8, a bit wider than a 2.8 would have been great. I'm normally shooting at 1.8 or 2, and so I get that really nice blurred background, which I wasn't able to get, and so I had to do a bit of blurring in post and things like that to get the style of shot that I wanted. So it would have been great to test with that. Battery life isn't actually something that was an issue for me in this case, because I wasn't using the camera for that long, but I know that if it was like a half day or full day shoot, then battery life would become an issue, and I'd probably have to look at something like a battery grip with a couple of batteries. But otherwise, I can't really think of anything else that I didn't really like about the camera. As I said, I actually really liked the camera, and there were some great things about the camera I loved the video functionality, having all the filters and things like that you can add over the video. Having the slow-mo at 180 frames per second was awesome, and I really enjoyed creating that little B-roll segment with the coffee. That was really cool. Obviously 4K at 60 frames per second is awesome. So as much as this camera is focused or targeted at still photography, it's amazing for video as well, which I guess is the thing that I really like about this camera. I feel like it sits on the fence really well. It's really good for still photography, and it's really good for video as well, and so you get in the best of both worlds, which I think is one of the most impressive things about the camera. The electronic viewfinder is great. It's massive. You get 100% coverage, and you can actually change the size. There's a little button on the side of the viewfinder that lets you sort of zoom out a little bit if that viewfinder is too big for you, so that's pretty cool as well. Obviously it gives you time-lapse features and stuff as well, so it's just loaded with features, and had I continued playing more, I feel like I would have discovered more and more. But I was actually really impressed with the camera. I didn't know how I would. I've never actually used a mirrorless camera before, and this is like a really high level mirrorless camera to go to straight off the bat. I didn't know how I would find using a mirrorless camera, but the G9 feels robust. It feels more like a DSLR, which I really liked. It had the top LCD, and it is quite a nice setup. So yeah, amazing camera. If you're gonna spend the money, I'd encourage you to try and pop in a store and try and get hands on with one and give it a go. But I was really impressed. It has all the functionality that I would need doing what I do in terms of sneaker photography and the Wi-Fi features, doing other apparel shoots and running shoots and different things like that. You're going to get really high image quality, and you have that really fast shutter, which is really good, but it also allows you to do vlogging and things like that. It's not too heavy. It's got heaps of great video features, and you can get all those B-roll segments and things like that. So it's a really good camera. I would have loved to pair as I said, would have loved to pair it with maybe even something like the 14mm 1.7 Leica lens. That would have been amazing. But yeah, just want to say a massive thanks to Panasonic for allowing me to review this camera and get it on loan, and hope you guys enjoyed this. This is again something different for me, so please like and subscribe, and let me know what you thought of the video, what you thought I could have done better. Of course, I'm not an expert when it comes to tech and cameras and different things, but I'm wanting to talk about it from my perspective and what I use and what features I value. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.